Hello to everybody out there on social media. My name is Matthew Johnson. Welcome to Steps to Freedom. We are in our 12-week series on how to go through the 12 steps. And in this video, we're going to be concentrating on the powerlessness and the unmanageability of step 1. So if you are not an addict or an alcoholic, you could still benefit from this. But I hope that addicts and alcoholics and other people that may be suffering from other addictions such as sex addiction, gambling addictions, it could be bulimic, anorexia, any of these type of addictions can be treated with a 12-step program. So I urge you, if you are not in a 12-step program, to get with a program. Look up local resources in your neighborhood. If you need someone to help you with any of that, you're more than welcome to contact me. You can email me at steps2freedom7@gmail.com. I'll be gladly able to try to do the best of my ability to get you those resources and connect it to people in your area, no matter where you're located. So like I said, I decided to use the basic text of Alcoholics Anonymous. This was the original. This is the program that God led me to and I went through and I'm still a part of. I also am a part of other Christian 12-step fellowships as well. This is not the only way. This is kind of the starter kit, how to get connected to God for dummies, I call it. And it kind of just goes beyond that. If you seek, you will find, and I urge you, if you don't have a copy right now, pause this video, go get one, get some highlighter pens, notebooks, whatever you need to be able to write everything down, so that way you can go back and show your family and friends how to go through these steps. Also, I urge you, if you don't mind, if you can like, subscribe, and share this video and all the other ones with your family and friends, that would be greatly appreciated. My whole goal here is to carry the message of God, carry the message of recovery and Christianity to those lost, sick, and suffering. And it would just be awesome if you would help with that. If you don't feel comfortable because I'm using the word Jesus and Christianity, I totally understand that. I wasn't always a Christian. I actually was an atheist and agnostic at one point and actually tried to bring people away from the Bible when I was incarcerated in prison back in 2012. So I totally understand. I am not trying to force religion or Christianity or anything like that onto you, but I have to stay true to myself, and I do not apologize for God or for Jesus or Christianity or recovery. So if you can, bear with me, I'll be as respectful as I can, but I have to stay true to myself, and I will do my best to respect you as well. So please, if you hear me use the word Jesus or Christianity, just if you could replace it with higher power or whatever religion you're a part of, if you're a part of one. I know these 12-step fellowships, the ones that are not Christian-based, have no connection to organized religion or anything like that. Alcoholics Anonymous is not affiliated. I am not representing Alcoholics Anonymous. I am also not a pastor or a spiritual guru. I'm just a simple man who's in recovery, who's a Christian, who's on fire for God, and I want to get the message of recovery and of Christianity, of Jesus out there, and do my part to carry this message, to carry God's message. So if you have your book now, we are going to be opening up to page 59. And before I do that, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Matthew Johnson, and I'm a recovered drug addict and alcoholic. And so we're going to be opening up to page 59. The reason why is because that's where the 12 steps are located on that page. And I like to start off when we're in each video. I'm going to start off and read the step that's connected to the video, and I'm going to talk about the principle that is connected with the step. So for step 1, the principle is honesty. And early on, my sponsor told me, he said, the one thing I need you to do before anything is to get honest, and to be honest with yourself, God, and me and the people around you. Because if you are not honest, there's no way I can help you, and there's no way that you or God can help yourself. And I was just like amazed when I heard that. I was like, okay, I didn't realize how dishonest I was and how much I lied and manipulated and did these deceitful things. And so I always had that in the back of my mind. I need to be honest. Am I being honest? You know, and don't get carried away with it, but just be aware. You need to practice honesty in all of your affairs. At least I did. And so we're going to read that step now if you're ready. It says, step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol or whatever substance or whatever you're going through, and that our lives had become unmanageable. And so when I first heard that step, it sounded pretty simple. I just looked back on my experience and I realized that, yeah, I was powerless over drugs and alcohol. My life was definitely unmanageable. I was in and out of jail. I was homeless. I was broke, couldn't keep a job. All my friends and family hated me or never wanted to do anything with me. And so I was like, okay, that makes sense. But it wasn't until I ended up getting with a group of guys that really broke it down to me. And I'm so grateful for them and how they did it. And I do it the exact same way. Kind of with my own little spin, and everyone will acquire their own signature on how to present the 12 steps to a sponsee or to whoever you might be presenting it to. But it wasn't until they broke down really what it meant to be powerless. And that is the disease concepts I'm going to share with you. The powerlessness only focuses on 2 of the disease concepts. It concentrates on the mental obsession and the phenomena of craving, which is the allergy, this unexplainable craving of this allergic reaction. And so we're going to concentrate on the mental obsession, this delusion or illusion, and then we're going to read a couple pages, kind of break down a little bit of stuff, and then we'll move on to the allergy, and then we'll move on to the unmanageability. So with this one, please, if you want, open up to page 22, okay? And we are going to be looking at the mental obsession. So when you get to page 22, we're going to be starting off kind of the middle of the page. It's kind of hard to show, but if you can locate where it says, if hundreds of experiences have shown him that one drink means another debacle with all its attendant suffering and humiliation, why is it that he takes that one drink? And it's going to be talking about one drink or first drink all through the book, and it's referring to, you hear this all the times in the room, it's the first drink that gets you drunk. It means it's the first drink that triggers this allergic reaction, this internal craving of more and more. And so what does that? This delusion or illusion literally manipulates you into thinking that you can control it, or it won't hurt me this time, or I'll have some kind of ingenious creative way to be able to control it, when if you're like me, you can definitely not. Then it goes on to say, why does he take that one drink? Why can't he stay on the water wagon? What has become of the common sense and willpower that he still sometimes displays with respect to other matters? Perhaps we will never have a full answer to these questions. Opinions vary considerably to why the alcoholic or drug addict reacts differently from normal people. We are not sure why. Once a certain point is reached, little can be done for him. We cannot answer the riddle. We know that while the alcoholic or drug addict keeps away from a drink or drug, as he may do for months or years, he reacts much like other men. We are equally positive that once he takes any alcohol or drugs or whatever into his system, something happens both in the bodily and mental sense. Bodily, referring to the phenomenon of craving or this allergic reaction, and the mental sense is referring to the mental obsession, this delusion or illusion, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. The experience of any alcoholic or drug addict will abundantly confirm this. These observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion, the allergy. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body. So it shows you that the main problem is the mental obsession in the mind. If that is removed, I no longer am going to put a drink or drug or whatever it is into my body, and I'm okay. I just got to make sure I don't trigger that allergy. If you ask him why he started on that last bender, the chances are he will offer you any one of 100 alibis. Sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make sense in the light of the havoc an alcoholics or drug addict drinking or using bout creates. They sound like the philosophy of a man who, having a headache, beats himself on the head with a hammer so that he can't feel the ache. If you draw this fallacious reasoning to the attention of an alcoholic or drug addict, he will laugh it off or become irritated and refuse to talk. Once in a while, he may tell the truth. There we go. We're talking about honesty, you know, how dishonest we are, sometimes without even knowing it. And the truth, strange to say, is usually he has no more idea why he took that first drink or drug than you have. Some drinkers or users have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time, but in their hearts they really do not know why they do it. Once this malady, the sickness, has a real hold, they are a baffled lot. There is the obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game, but they are often suspect they are down for the count. How true is this? Few realize in a vague way their families and friends sense that these drinkers or users are abnormal, but everybody hopefully awaits the day when the sufferer will arouse himself from his lethargy and assert his power of will. The tragic truth is that the man or woman be a real alcoholic or drug addict, the happy day may not arrive. He has lost control. And that is so sad. That end part always gives me chills because it's like the statistics are so far down. Like all the family and friends keep rooting and they're there and they go for usually years and they just watch their loved one deteriorate. And a lot of them, I would say the majority, just suffer until they die from some complication or suicide or overdose, or, you know, they just don't get it. They, you know, and some do. Thank God I'm one of those people, and that's why I do everything in my power to further the message, to further God's kingdom. That's why this channel is started. It is God's channel. It is your channel. I'm just the host. You know, because if it wasn't for someone doing this for me, I wouldn't be here. I really believe 100% would be dead right now. Suicide, I think, would have went for me, or overdose on fentanyl. So if we go back up to the top, or just kind of, I'll just kind of glance everything over. The mental obsession is such a manipulator, is such a liar, that the majority of the people have no idea why. And that's why it's important for me to talk about this mental obsession, because that's what it does. It literally makes you believe you do not have a disease, that you don't have a problem or a situation, even though you have been doing this for years, you know, like it wasn't that bad this time, or I'll be able to control it, or you're just on like this autopilot. I definitely believe part of demon possession. I'm not saying that, you know, I know there's a scientific side to it, but I definitely was demon possessed. It opened me up for other things as well now in that spiritual realm. And I totally believed that I would be okay until a certain point, and things got really bad because this disease progresses, and it is a fatal illness left, 100% it is a fatal illness left untreated. And we're going to get into that stuff later on as well. But they just believe this lie, and they try to control it, and eventually you either get sober or you die or suffer. So I'll kind of leave it like that. I don't want to keep going too far into it because we've got a lot of material, and I want to try to keep these videos around an hour. But if it has to go over, this is important. Just pause and rewatch and do what you got to do to finish it. So next, we're going to be getting on to page 24. And this is all in the chapter, There is a Solution, by the way, if I didn't state that before going to that page. And so give a little background about this. It's still on the mental obsession, But you'll hear a lot of these times in these 12-step fellowships, in these rooms, that just play the tape through, or don't drink no matter what. Just remember how bad the pain and suffering and humiliation was. Just remember what it felt like to go to prison and jail, or to be homeless, to be suicidal, or remember that feeling of your children being taken away. And I'm sorry to say this, but none of that was able to keep me sober. If I couldn't get sober for my kids, if I couldn't get sober for my friends and family, or even for myself, I didn't have enough self-willpower or anything to get me sober, then just playing the tape through and how bad it was is not going to work either. But I will say this, it does work if you are spiritually fit and connected and have a relationship with your higher power. And hopefully your higher power is Jesus, but whatever your higher power is. And so when I read this, I just want you to hear the truth, and that if you're ever in these 12-step fellowship rooms, that if they say just play the tape through without saying being already spiritually fit, that it's only a matter of time before you go back to the drink or drug, according to the literature. Okay? So at the top of the page on 24, it says, at a certain point in the drinking or using of every alcoholic or drug addict, he passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking or using is of absolutely no avail. This tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it's suspected. The fact is that most alcoholics or drug addicts, for reasons yet obscure, have lost power of the choice and drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. Here's the part. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness, our mind, with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink or drug. So that shows you right there, I'm unable to bring into my mind all the pain and suffering of a week or month ago. It gives a little timeline. Usually it's a few weeks or a few months, but eventually I'm going to forget. That's the way our minds are conditioned. We're not supposed to record every single trauma or anything. And if you are like me, you have tons of trauma and tons of horrible negative experiences you don't want to relive. But it is important to try to remember that stuff. But for me, this never worked. Until I worked the 12 steps and actually worked the program of recovery, which I left up here for people to see if you've never seen my prior videos. I urge you to go back after this video and watch the Foundation of Recovery using Alcoholics Anonymous's program of recovery. But it never worked for me until I was doing all three sides of this program. And I urge you, if you're saying stuff in these rooms and you're not backing it up with saying, well, you can do, play the tape through as much as you like, as long as you're spiritual fit and have a foundation that is strong and sturdy, then you can use that to reinforce how bad it was out there. Because every time I see an addict and alcoholic, someone homeless, someone struggling, that allows to fill me with humility, and I see wow, how bad and how easy it would be to go back to that. And then that strengthens me and keeps me further away from another drink or drug. But not having a program, not being connected to Jesus, I'm just going to go back in a matter of time if I don't have that connection. So with that being said, we are going to move on from the mental obsession, even though there's way more stuff in this chapter talking about the mental obsession. I just don't have enough time, so I urge you to finish this chapter. And there's also another chapter we're going to go into called More About Alcoholism, and I urge you to go into that. We're going to look a little bit into that in the next few pages after these. So bear with me, and we'll get into that. So now we're going to look at the second part of the powerlessness, right? The phenomena of craving, this unexplainable craving, this allergic reaction. So if you want to go to the doctor's opinion, that's the chapter, and it's on page XXVIII. We'll go to there. It's in the beginning of the book. Okay. All right, here we go. So it's at the top. It's one little paragraph, and this basically sums up the allergic reaction. This is the allergic reaction. The phenomenon of craving is one of the most easiest things to identify. A lot easier than the mental obsession. So I'm not gonna dwell and harp on it as much as I did the mental obsession. We're gonna read one little paragraph, talk about it, and move on. But I do urge you to read the doctor's opinion. This is the letter that was written to AA from William D. Silkworth, who was the leading physician who specialized in drug and alcohol treatment over 30 years. I explained this in my first video, but to give a little background, if you're watching this video for the first time, that he came up with the theory of spiritual malady, the mental obsession, and this allergy, and that if you treated it with spirituality, put it that way, that the mental obsession would be removed. And he saw the highest results of people who went the route of spirituality compared to the other things. So this is just a theory. None of this is facts, but they still use this theory to this day, even though that science is explaining a little bit about this phenomena of craving. It's not so much a phenomena anymore. And I'm not going to get into that. I explained it in a little bit of my first video, but they have Joe and Charlie, who were these guys back in the day who made these tapes that you can go on YouTube or wherever and look them up and learn a little bit about the allergy and how it's not so much of a phenomenon anymore. But we'll get into it now. And it talks about on page XXVIII, we believe and so suggested a few years ago that the action of alcohol or drugs on these chronic alcoholics and drug addicts is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomena of craving, unexplainable craving, is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker or user. These allergic types can never safely use drugs and alcohol in any form at all, and once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. So that basically explains itself, is that I can never use drugs and alcohol safely and successfully anymore. I go to the extreme of I don't use alcoholic mouthwash, because at least 10% gets absorbed in the top of the roof of your mouth. And plus, I don't want to accidentally swallow it. Now, if I did swallow some or eat some food that had some alcohol or something like that in it, would it trigger the allergy? I don't know. Maybe, probably not. Am I willing to try that? No. I take extreme precaution on what I eat, because it's the same thing if you're allergic to peanuts or strawberries or whatever it might be, that you're going to go into the restaurant, you can be like, hey, is that cooked with peanut oil? Or, hey, that fruit salad, does it have any strawberries? I'm allergic. Or if you're lactose intolerant, you're just aware of your body and you don't mix those things because you don't want to take a chance of having an allergic reaction. And if someone is really seriously allergic, it can actually kill them. And for me, I'm extremely allergic to drugs and alcohol. It will kill me. I can have things like nicotine and caffeine. Don't ask me why. I can. It doesn't trigger the allergy. Even though I don't try to take things like pre-workout, for me, I just don't like it. Certain things I like, certain things I don't. But when it comes to this, just be aware. Tell your doctor if you have this disease. Say, hey, I'm allergic to drugs and alcohol, and explain it. And tell them, like, hey, please put it on my file if something ever happens. Unless it's an emergency and you have to pump me full of narcotics, please don't. I have people ask me all the time, sponsees and other people, well, what happens if I have to have heart surgery and they have to give me these narcotics, these painkillers, or something like that, or if I'm found unresponsive and they automatically give me something? I don't know. That's between. I hope you're spiritually fit enough. Do I know people that can take prescription medication and all that kind of stuff? Yes, I do. I'm not trying to chance it. Unless it's forced upon me and there's no other way, those are the what ifs. We'll get to it when it happens. But I know my truth, and I know I need to avoid this as much as possible. And to throw this out there, when people are like, oh, it's okay as long as a doctor prescribes it, I'm going to say that is not true, and people should not be saying that, because it really could lead someone to relapse and actually die, especially if they're seriously alcoholic or drug addict. And so the reason why is because the phenomena of craving, this allergy, cannot read a doctor's notepad. It cannot understand. Your body's going to react to whatever chemicals put in it. Just like your body can, doctor says, well, you're allowed to eat peanuts now, and even though you're allergic to them, just take 2 a day as long as you take it responsibly and you give it to your sponsor. Like, it doesn't make any sense, Do some people need painkillers and they used to be addicts and stuff? Yes, and they really truly need it and there's no other way? Sure, follow a doctor's advice. I am not a doctor. I'm throwing a disclaimer out, so feel free to disregard. I'm just giving my experience, strength, and hope. So get with the physician, talk to them. If you really need to, or need to take narcotics or something like that, then do what your doctor says. I'm just saying, be very, very careful because, I don't want to go back out. All right, with that being said, I think we summed up that. And next, we're going to get into the unmanageability. So we got into the powerlessness. Now we're going to get into the unmanageability. So I just want to throw out there the unmanageability for the longest time. I just thought it was like, oh, I went to jail, or I got some DUIs, I crashed some cars, oh, I became homeless, all these little bits of truth, which are all true, right? Those all make up unmanageability. But I want to kind of paint a picture for you guys. So the unmanageability, right? If there was a building and it got exploded by a bomb, and there's a whole bunch of shrapnel, and there's miles of the radius of all the destruction, where are we going to go to get to ground zero to see what actually happened to that building? What was really used? What was it? And so if you go to the middle, you're going to have a better chance of finding out really what happened instead of you starting on these outer radiuses. So going to jail, becoming homeless, having problems with families and friends, all that type of stuff, starts on the outer side. And if you follow that, then yes, you will get to the truth. You will get to ground zero. But if we just start at ground zero, which we are doing with the mental obsession, the allergy, and now the unmanageability, you're going to see the truth a lot more easier. And you're not going to have to go through so many hoops and see so much different opinions and different things. You're going to get right to the source. So without further ado, if you go to page 52, okay, and it should be in the chapter We Agnostics, we are going to be talking about something called spiritual malady. Now, you've heard me probably talk about it in this video already and the video prior, that spiritual malady means spiritual sickness. Now, every single man, woman, child, human being on this earth at some point in time, or all the time, is going to suffer from spiritual malady. The only difference is, for the true alcoholic, drug addict, or whoever else has whatever disease or addiction, that when we drink or use or activate it, trigger that allergy, that we die, or we suffer, or we end up in some kind of institution, right? We become restless, irritable, and discontent. And so that's what we're going to be talking about, and that's what this middle paragraph on page 52 in We Agnostics is going to be talking about. It's going to give a whole bunch of different questions that I'm going to ask you viewers to ask yourselves and to share with other people. Do these apply to you? And if they do apply to you, just know that this is applying to the end of your drinking and using career, and also when you're sober. So when I'm completely sober, do these things apply? And then to the end of my drinking and using, do these things apply to me? So it starts right in the middle where it says, we had to ask ourselves. So it says, we had to ask ourselves why we shouldn't apply to our human problems the same readiness to change our point of view. We were having trouble with personal relationships. Are you having trouble with personal relationships? We couldn't control our emotional natures. Can you control your emotional natures? We were a prey to misery and depression. Are you a prey to misery and depression? We couldn't make a living. Can you make a living? We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. Are you full of fear? We were unhappy. Are you unhappy? We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Was this not a basic solution of these bedevilments? They call them bedevilments. That's another word for like evil, corroding, some type of language like that. More important than whether we should see newsreels of lunar flight? Of course it was. So kind of summing this all up, restless, irritable, discontent, not feeling comfortable in one's skin, untreated alcoholism. These things, they call it the RIDS, which stands for restless, irritable, and discontent. So if you ever hear that in the rooms of AA or any other 12-step fellowship, it's the RIDS, restless, irritable, and discontent. So if these are all applying to you, then you're suffering from spiritual sickness, and that's what the 12 steps are designed for. So that's the unmanageability. That the reason why I'm most likely getting these DUIs and becoming homeless and having problems with family and friends and full of fear and can't function without having some kind of substance, some kind of relief, is this spiritual malady. That I need a solution. And in the beginning, the drugs and the alcohol were my solution. It was my God. They were my gods, lowercase g. And they worked really well. Like, I used them even when these consequences were piling up. But I just want to make it clear that going to jail and becoming homeless and getting divorces, or your life being in shambles, doesn't mean you're a real alcoholic or drug addict. Because normal people that deal with those things go to jail and things happen. I mean, it's not normal to go to jail, but someone who's not an addict and alcoholic can go to jail. It doesn't mean that it's what it is. And you hear so many people in these rooms, these 12-step fellowships say, well, I know why my life's so manageable and why I'm an addict and alcoholic. It's because I go to jail. Or they say this comment that, I break out in handcuffs, which is, it could be true, but some people are addicts and alcoholics. They never go to jail, but they end up killing themselves because they maybe never go to jail. Some people don't have that luck. So that's what I want to make loud and clear. You're either going to treat this spiritual malady, this untreated alcoholism or drug addiction, one of two ways. You're either going to treat it with drugs and alcohol, or you're going to treat it with a spiritual experience. And that spiritual experience, the best way to go have a spiritual experience is through the 12 steps. That's why you hear me promoting it so much and telling you, because that I look at like getting connected to God for dummies. This is the starter pack. This is what led me on the path to becoming a Christian and a believer. And the same thing I do in Alcoholics Anonymous and these other 12-step fellowships, I do in my church. I got a home group, a home church. I have commitments. I volunteer. I go to Bible studies. I sponsor. I do a whole bunch of stuff in those churches. I carry the message. I go and carry the gospel. And I just want to make that loud and clear. Like, this is church for a bunch of drug addicts and alcoholics. It's just been encoded to not use Jesus and Christianity, because so many people, including myself, when I was an atheist and an agnostic, I didn't want Jesus. You start mentioning Jesus, I'm going to run away. And that's why I say, please substitute when I say Jesus or Christianity for whatever higher power religion you're a part of. Because I just think it's important for me to stay true and share that stuff with you, so like that the majority of all this stuff came out of the Bible, and I just think it's amazing. So hopefully you're not offended. If you are, too bad. Anyway, so kind of went over the spiritual malady, the spiritual sickness. Hopefully that made sense to anybody. Hopefully I didn't leave anything out with that. I think this is one of the most important parts. On page 64, I just want to add in real quick. It talks actually about the spirituality a little bit more, and I use this line all the time, and I urge you, if you're working with a sponsee or just anyone, I always start with this line before you go into the spiritual malady, or vice versa, kind of what I'm doing now, because it paints the picture so easy, and I've used it already in the last video and maybe even this one. It says on the bottom of page 64, resentment is the #1 offender. It destroys more alcoholics or drug addicts than anything else. From it stems all forms of spiritual disease. For we had been not only mentally and physically ill, talk about the mental obsession and the allergy, we have been spiritually sick. When the spiritual malady, the sickness, is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. That means the mental obsession goes away, and I don't put a drink and drug in my body, or whatever it might be for you, and I don't end up in jails, institutions, or die. And I say that all the time because I want that to stick in everyone's minds, because that's how this way of living has its advantages for all. Even if you don't have addictions or anything, you work these 12 steps if you're not religious or spiritual or anything, and it allows you to have a spiritual experience, which will turn to a spiritual awakening. It will treat that that thing you're looking for. The drugs and alcohol worked and then turned on me. Now I'm left with nothing. It's God's love. It's God's goodness that allows us to get that relief. And because we get that relief now from God, that mental obsession's gone and no longer there. Praise God, praise Jesus for that. And now I can function. And now I'm happy, joyous, and free instead of restless, irritable, and discontent. So hopefully that made sense. If not, please email me, send me comments, message me through Facebook or Messenger or whatever, and I will try to get you more resources if you're struggling with any of the 3 disease concepts. All right, with that being said, hopefully you understand now the powerlessness and the unmanageability of step 1, and that you understand that the principle attached to it is honesty. And until you get honest with yourself, God, and to another human being, especially every other human being you come in contact to, that this is not going to take root, unfortunately. So you have to have that gift of desperation. You have to have that rigorous honesty that it talks about and how it works. And if you don't, keep coming back. That's why we use that slogan. It's because this program is for the people who really want it. Not necessarily need it, but really want it, but also for the people that need it. Okay, next we're going to go to the chapter more about alcoholism, and we're going to be focusing on pages 30 to 31. So more about alcoholism is on page 30, and I like this chapter a lot. I urge you to go and read this chapter as well, because it goes really into depth, and they have some pretty cool stories in here as well. And it shows the mental obsession, the allergy, even talks about some of the spirituality and stuff that we've been focusing on. So if we go to the top of the page, it says, most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics or drug addicts. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Talk about the allergy and the mental obsession. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking or using careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove that we could drink or use drugs like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he or she will control and enjoy his or her drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker or user. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. That is such a scary promise. And all through this book, there are going to be really good promises, and there's going to be not so good promises or consequences or warnings. And I just want to make that clear that while going through these steps, these are the promises and the warnings that we should be looking at and seeing, okay, if I don't do this, this is what's going to happen to me, or if I do this, that this is what's going to happen to me. So it's all good to look at if we get honest with ourselves, what could happen if we don't do this work. Then it goes on to say, we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics or drug addicts. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people or presently may be has to be smashed. You have to understand that you can have no reservations, and if you think that you can pull it off or control your drinking and using or substitute it with anything else, then I urge you to stop watching this video, stop going to these 12-step fellowships, get out there, go to your nearest bar, go to your nearest dope hole, do whatever you got to do. I pray that you stay safe. I'm not telling you to go relapse, but what I am telling you is you need to be 100% convinced that any life run on self-will cannot be a success, and you have to have that reservation smashed. I know people, I've heard of people, including myself, I've done this, where I was like, well, I'm going to go into these rooms and I'm going to stay sober for a year, and if I do, then maybe I'll have another drink or a drug in the future. Or I always kind of let that linger there. Maybe in the future I can do that. In the beginning, sometimes you can let that be there because it might kind of always still be there because that's our nature, is to want to drink and use drugs. But if you really are harping on this and you really are wanting to that bad, this stuff's not gonna work. It might actually hinder you from further recovery, or it could benefit you, still coming in these rooms and stuff. But I know for me, I needed to get out there and be 100%, or I'm just wasting my time and everyone else's time. But like I said, choice is yours, but you have to be 100% convinced. Then it goes on to say, we alcoholics or drug addicts are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking and using. We know that no real alcoholic or drug addict ever recovers control. And if you look at the word ever, and there's going to be many other words in here, I forgot to talk about how the page 24 is italicized. But the word here that's italicized, ever, and italicized means that it stands out. It's changed slightly because it's extremely important. They want you to focus on that word. And so it shows ever, like you can never regain control again. All of us felt at times that we were regaining control, but at such intervals, usually brief, were invariably followed by still less control, which led in time to pitful and incomprehensible demoralization. We are convinced to a man that alcoholics or drug addicts of our type, the hopeless type, the disease type, are in the grip of a progressive illness. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. And that's where the illness starts to show. It's in the doctor's opinion as well, but it's talking about this is a progressive illness. And they have a saying in these 12-step fellowship, in these rooms, that your disease is doing push-ups in the parking lot. When you're in a meeting, your disease is right out there doing push-ups. What that means is when you're sober or even in active addiction, your disease is getting stronger and stronger. It's working out. And you'll hear me say all the time, whatever happens in the physical happens in the spiritual. So understand that. But just know your disease is getting stronger, rather if you're in active addiction or not. And always be aware on one of these days, if you relapse and go back out, that your disease might be so far progressed that it overtakes you and you won't have another recovery. You always hear as well that you might not have another recovery, but you always will have another relapse. And that's some scary stuff. I know my last one was so bad that I didn't think my mind was going to come back, that I thought the disease was going to overtake me, and I'm going to become one of those people who are just unaware of their surroundings and oblivious, pushing a shopping cart, talking to themselves, because that's where I believe this disease will take me. It will warp my mind and overtake me, and one of these days, that last shot of meth might put me out. We are like men who lost their legs. They never grow new ones. Neither does there appear to be any kind of treatment which will make alcoholics or drug addicts of our kind like other men. We have tried every imaginable remedy. In some instances, there has been brief recovery, followed always by a still worse relapse. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism, drug addiction, agree that there is no such thing as making a normal drinker or user out of an alcoholic. Science one day may accomplish this, but hasn't done so yet. And then it goes on to say, despite all we can say, many who are real alcoholics or drug addicts are not going to believe that they're in that class. By every form of self-deception and experimentation, they will try to prove themselves exceptions to the rule, therefore non-alcoholic. If anyone who is showing ability to control his or her drinking can do the right about face and drink or use drugs like a gentleman, our hats are off to him or her. Heaven knows we have tried hard and long enough to drink and use drugs like other people. And then it goes on to talk about here are some of the methods we have tried. And it talks about like drinking beer only instead of liquor. Maybe it doesn't say this in the book, so feel free to discard. But maybe using kratom instead of going back to the heroin or kava. Oh, I never had a problem with spice, so I could do that once on the weekend. Some kind of weird method. I tried everything. I tried just smoking weed. I'm just going to get my medical marijuana card. I'll be good. I just tried the kratom. I just tried drinking beer. I even wanted to drink non-alcoholic beer. I was like, man, I just want to be able to have a beer and just relax, even if there's no non-alcohol. And even if there's no alcohol in it. That was the illusion, my disease. Why? Why play around with it? It doesn't make any sense. But you have to go through this process to be 100% convinced. And then it goes on to the bottom to say, we do not like to pronounce any individual as alcoholic, but you can quickly diagnose yourself. Step over to the nearest bar room or dope. I hate saying this, but it's true. And try some controlled drinking or using. Try to drink or use and stop abruptly. Try it more than once. It will not take long for you to decide if you are honest with yourself about it. It may be worth a bad case of the jitters, like withdrawals or whatever, if you get a full knowledge of your condition. So I hope you don't have to go back out and relapse and try this, but if you do, be safe. Nowadays with all the fentanyl and God knows what they're putting into these drugs, you could die, you might not come back. It's not like it was just a little bit of alcohol that they were experimenting with. This stuff is on a whole new level, so be very careful. But I want to highlight the part where it says, we do not like to pronounce any individual as alcoholic. You can quickly diagnose yourself. And that's where I can't diagnose anyone and say, are you an alcoholic or not, or a drug addict or not. Only you can, because there are so many people that have a problem in that disease, and it looks like the real thing, which we're about to get into when we get over to the moderate drinker, hard drinker, real alcoholic. And you'll see what I mean when we get to those pages next, that you might look like the real thing, but not be the real thing. And that's why it's up to you. For me, as a sponsor, as someone giving this knowledge and truth to the person suffering, hey, do you understand these symptoms? Spiritual malady, mental obsession, the allergy, what happens when you put drugs and alcohol in your body, whatever condition, and so forth. And if these all line up with you, then I suggest you take the rest of your medication, your treatment, as the rest of the 12 steps, and have this spiritual awakening, which is change your personality, and then live happy, joyous, and free, and give back and further God's word. And so just want to point that out, make it loud and clear, that we do not call or label anyone an alcoholic, a drug addict, or whatever. Let them do that on themselves. Even if you know 100% that they are, and there's been times I still always say, hey, do you think? And I try to be like, hey, this is a good, strong suggestion. I think you are, but it's up to that individual if they're ready or not. So with that being said, let's now go to the chapter, going backwards, into there is a solution on pages 20 and 21. And we're going to be talking and focusing on the moderate drinker, hard drinker, and the real alcoholic. And this is a description of how to identify them a little bit better in their behaviors and kind of give some background in it. So if you go to page 20, and you go all the way down to the very bottom of this new paragraph right down here, you're going to see it says moderate drinkers. And so I always have my guys put a 1 next to it and underline and highlight this. Every time we get into where it says hard drinker, you're going to put a 2. And where it says real alcoholic, you're going to put a 3. And the reason why is because when we analyze them, you'll know where to go back and find the stuff. Hopefully, you'll be highlighting and marking all through the stuff I'm telling you, all the key words. But it's a lot easier if I'm in their person with, and if I'm in person with somebody to explain, and I'll do all the highlighting instead of online. So, moderate drinkers, it says, have little trouble in giving up liquor or drugs entirely. They have a good reason for it. They can take it or leave it alone. So these are the people that you see who never come into a 12-step fellowship. They never even think about if they have a problem or not. You know, a lot of times I give this description like I'm in a restaurant, like a steakhouse or something, and there's some gentleman I can see who ordered a nice fat steak, and he got a nice tall ice cold beer, and he sits there and he's out to eat for like an hour, hour and a half, and that's the only beer he got. And then when he gets up and he leaves, I look over there and there's this much drinking out of it, and it's pretty much a half a beer or more. And I'm like, wow, like that's crazy. And me being a real alcoholic drug addict wants to go over there, drink it, and finish it, because that's how sick my mind is or was. And so that's a pretty good description. It might be someone who has a couple, you know, and gets a little tipsy, but usually they're like, oh, I don't want to get, you know, too tipsy. I don't like the way it makes me feel. I'm starting to feel funny. Or the grandma who has a glass of champagne or spiked eggnog around the holidays. You know, that's what this is talking about. And the same thing applies into drugs and alcohol as well. You know, there were people that back in the day, I've heard stories, but so this is not from my experience, feel free to disregard, but maybe did like cocaine on the weekends. Or I had friends that would take painkillers once in a while, and you know, for fun, not for pain, or take kratom or this and that, and they don't go crazy with it. They don't have that chemical makeup like I do or we do. So then it gets into, then we have a certain type of hard drinker. He may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair him or her physically and mentally. It may cause him to die a few years before his or her time if a sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, change of environment, or the warning of a doctor becomes operative. This man can also stop or moderate. Although he may find it difficult and troublesome and may even need medical attention. So this description right here is saying that this habit will gradually impair him physically and mentally. So it may cause him, he could develop wet brain, you know, which if you look up wet brain, it's basically like Alzheimer's, it's like dementia, but I feel like worse. Physically, he might have kidney problems or liver problems, cirrhosis of the liver, you know, something like that. Or he might even do some crazy things where he actually cuts himself or you know, goes through a window, car accident, something like that, that harms him. And it says it may cause him to die a few years before his time. Like I said, cirrhosis or cancer or something could be developed from it. If a sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, change of environment, or the warning of a doctor becomes operative, this man can also stop or moderate. So when something bad enough happens in that person's life, it wakes them up. Like they're about to get a divorce, or maybe they go to jail. They're about to lose their house or all this kind of stuff. And they're like, okay, I'm done. They had enough pain and suffering, and it woke them up. That is someone that does not have the mental obsession or the allergy. They just had a habit. And I want to make that loud and clear, and that's why we do not pronounce anyone alcoholic or drug addict or with this disease, because we don't know. It's kind of like wolf in sheep's clothing. We don't know who's who, you know. But they have enough self-will because they can stop or moderate. Although they may find it difficult and troublesome and may even need medical attention. So they may try to stop and even have withdrawals. They can have DTs, all that kind of stuff. So then we get into the third part about the real alcoholic. And this about the real alcoholic is going to be from page 21 all the way over to 22. So we're actually looking at pages 20 through 22. So then it goes, but what about the real alcoholic? He may start off as a moderate drinker. He or she may or may not become a continuous hard drinker, but at some stage of his or her drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor or drug consumption once he starts to drink or use. Here is a fellow who has been puzzling you, especially in lack of control. So next, this is going to identify the real alcoholic. And if you can relate to all this stuff I'm about to read, the chances are that if you have this disease, you probably do. It goes on to say, he does, or she, does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking or using. He or she is a doctor, a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He is certainly mildly intoxicated. He is always more or less insanely drunk or high. His disposition while drinking or using resembles his normal nature, but little. He or she may be one of the finest fellows or gals in the world, but yet let them drink for even a day, and they become frequently and disgustingly, even dangerously antisocial. He or she may have a positive genius for getting drunk or high exactly at the wrong moment, particularly when some important decision must be made or engagement kept. He or she is often perfectly sensible and well balanced concerning everything except drugs and alcohol. But in that respect, he or she is incredibly dishonest and selfish. They often possess special abilities, skills, and aptitudes, and have promising careers ahead of them. They use their gifts to build up a bright outlook for their family and themselves, and then pull the structure down on their heads by a senseless series of sprees. They are the people who go to bed so intoxicated they ought to sleep around the clock, yet early the next morning they search madly for the bottle of the drugs misplaced or hidden the night before. If they cannot afford it, they may have liquor or drugs concealed all around the house to be certain no one gets their entire supply from them to throw down the waste pipe, the drain. As matters grow worse, they begin to use a combination of high-powered sedative and liquor to quiet their nerves so they can go to work. Then comes the day when they simply cannot make it and they get drunk and high all over again. Perhaps they go to a doctor, which gives them morphine or some kind of sedative, which should taper off. Then they appear at hospitals and sanitariums, sure, mental institutions, detoxes nowadays, things like that. Then it goes on to say, this is by no means a comprehensive picture of the true alcoholic or drug addict. Their behavior patterns vary, but this description should identify them roughly. Sorry for like stumbling or maybe reading fast. I'm trying to get a lot of this in because it's already almost an hour. And I'm trying to use different names for like him and her and drug addict, non-drug addict, because I feel like that's the majority watching, or alcoholics and drug addicts. So I'm trying to get all that in there so everyone can kind of relate to it in their own way. But that is a powerful explanation of an addict or an alcoholic. That is definitely me. If you heard my testimony, listen to that. You use your own testimony, because all this stuff in step 1 and all through the book is about your experience. I'm giving you all the facts and information for you to make the decision. Do I suffer with drug and alcohol addiction or whatever other disease, concept, and do I need treatment? I know for me, I did, and I got the treatment, and yes, I am recovered, contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. It's a one day at a time daily reprieve, but I am recovered because the mental obsession is removed. So I urge you, if you're not in a 12-step fellowship, get with somebody, work the 12 steps. There is such more good information in this book. If you have any other questions or anything, please feel free to email me at my email address is steps2freedom7@gmail.com, or message me through Facebook and Facebook Messenger. I'm also looking for testimonies. I haven't got any. I've talked to some people, and hopefully they're going to be sending me their testimony. If you just want audio or you're going to do video as well, please just try to make it as best quality with lighting and sound as possible, and send it to me, because I would love this channel to start hearing people, rather if they have this disease and now a solution, to hear your stories. And if you don't have any addictions, I would love to hear your testimony, how you became a Christian. Were you always a Christian? This is just not for people who are in recovery for drug addiction, alcoholism, or whatever else. This is for everybody. It's for all who are Christian, spiritual, as long as it's lining up with recovery or Christianity. This is the channel for you. Let's take these steps to get to a better life, to help people, and to further the gospel of Jesus and the gospel of recovery. I have blabbed enough. I urge you to get with your local church or your local 12-step fellowships and work this stuff sooner the better. Please don't wait too long, because we're like ticking time bombs. You never know when that mental obsession is going to go off, and left untreated, this disease is 100% fatal, and I don't want to see anyone die. So please like, subscribe, share with all your friends and family, even strangers. Let people know that you can recover, and I love you guys. If no one told you that they loved you, just know that Jesus loves you, and so do I. God bless everybody.